find the fish. Find the fish. Find the fish. I think we can all agree that finding the fish is the number one most important thing to consistently catching fish, right? Because regardless of if you have a $100,000 boat or all the nicest rods and reels and all the nicest tackle and a million slam shadies, you're not going to catch fish if you're in a dead zone. But the problem is so many of us don't have time to do the scouting and to be on the water every single day like a full-time guide. Well, don't worry. We have you covered. That is why we've come up with our smart fishing game plan. That's every single Friday morning. We put out a 10-minute video that literally shows you where to find the fish in your area. 10 minutes or less. That's all it takes. 10 minutes or less. We will get on satellite maps and actually show you the trends based on weather, based on the tides, and based on what's happening right now to help you go out there and consistently find the honey holes. It's free to all of our Salt Strong Insider members. That's our smart fishing game plan. So if you are a member, make sure to be checking out every Friday morning. We're coming up with a smart fishing game plan. If you're not a member, what the heck are you waiting on? This is just one more benefit on top of the 20 to 30% off all of our tackle, on top of all the how-tos and all the on-the-water reports and all the fishing reports we're putting up every single day, and the amazing community. You will now get the smart fishing game plan completely for free, part of your membership. Go to saltstrong.com to join us today. Here's the episode.
This fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way.
And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing.
Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds. We are back again. Lukey, what's up, dude?
Just ready to get into it. That's all about stuff we used to buy, but no longer do.
Saltwater fishing products that we no longer use, and why? This is going to be an interesting one. I'm going to kick it right off the bat because this is something that we've done videos on. We've had some people disagree with us, but this is stuff that we no longer buy, knowing what we know. And it's swivels, snap swivels in particular. I used to have a ton of those little snap swivels. For like, when we're talking about inshore saltwater fishing, there's still probably used for some, maybe offshore. I don't know. My wife uses them in earrings. Kids use them. Sometimes it's basically little paper clip kind of things. When was the last time you used a snap swivel?
It's been a while.
What about a swivel in general? Like we used to use it for spoons for a while.
Yeah, and then I did a test on just when using braid with spoons. The fact that braid is so nimble, it takes. I did a test where I just was twisting the braid to see how many twists per inch of braid was enough to actually have the swivel start letting the braid not accumulate any more twist. And it was a little over 7 turns per inch. That's a lot of twists in your braid. And most spoons, they're not doing the full helicopter. If you look at underwater, as long as you're not retreating too fast, they'll kind of flutter one way and then flutter the other. So it almost cancels each other out. So yeah, I found that the more kind of experiments I've done, it seems like swivels aren't very helpful. In many cases, they're actually hurtful. And so one is knot strength. I used to think that tying a braid to a swivel to the leader was better with knots. And that's not true at all. That once I got the FG knot, the actual FG knot is better than any braided swivel knot that I found so far. And it makes sense when you think about it, right? Because the two lines connect to each other. They have a little bit of give, and that just helps just create a little bit more friction and more give if a big tension load happens. And so without a doubt, a good line to line knot is stronger than a swivel connection. And for those of us fishing shallow water with a lot of sharp objects on the bottom, like oysters, just having that swivel up on the line assembly can help bring your line down close to the bottom, which will have it more likely to get nicked. So again, so far, I haven't really seen a need for swivels. The cons of it have outweighed the pros, I should say. Just talk about the pros, because I'm sure you're wondering, hey, snap swivels are so fast to change lures. Yes, that is right. It is faster to change lures with a snap. But it saves just a little bit. And in most cases, if you're not catching fish, it's not because you need to change lures, you need to change spots. So that was a big thing. Like I now rarely change lures when out fishing. I just have 2 rods, one for shallow water, one for deeper water, and I'll just change based on the depth. And as long as the lure is chosen with the known trends for the time, it's the actual need to change lures is usually not too big. And it's just not worth the risk of having that weight on the line to take the line down close to the bottom.
Yeah, and we've fished with, and we've had tons of different pros, guys who are winning tournaments, guys like C. Richardson have fishing shows, the Peter Deeks. They all agree less hardware is better. Like less is more. You do not need a bunch of extra hardware. So no more swivels. The next one, this one might irritate a few people because this product works, but I haven't bought it in years now, is Gulp. Remember when we first started Salt Storm, that's all we were all in on Gulp, and we've never been sponsored by them. We could really care less, and we still sell it in our store. Gulp still works, but for me, it was Gulp prices kept going up. They changed a little formula. Remember when that happened? And I still don't know if they fixed it or not. Doesn't even matter. But they changed that formula. Wasn't working as well, and it was getting destroyed by everything. I mean, it was just like you catch one fish and the whole thing's torn. I was like, man, I'm spending a fortune on these dumb Gulp baits. And now I think with what we know, you mentioned it earlier, I mean, it's about the spot. It's about having the right lure and knowing how to rig it. And Gulp does help. It definitely can work. It has worked. Can probably continue to work, but it's something I haven't bought in years. And I know I haven't seen you use Gulp in a long time either.
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, so we're not saying Gulp doesn't work. Gulp does work.
I just said Gulp works.
Yeah, it really is. I just want to reiterate that. Like it does work. It is, whatever they have in that scent is legit, and it is special. And it's unfortunate that, again, they just got softer over the years. But then once they got soft, like I was actually relying on Gulp. Like it was the point where if I didn't have some, a few packs of Gulp, whether it's jerk shads or shrimp, I use them both and I love them both. If I didn't have multiple packs of both on a trip, I'd be like uncomfortable, like, oh my gosh, like what happens if I run out? Then once the price went up, I just started using other lures and realized these other lures are working pretty darn good too. And so it wasn't essential to buy that. And then once we got introduced to this Dr. Juice inshore slam scent that Dr. Juice made for us, where they specifically targeted redfish, sea trout, snook, flounder. And then we have the power prawns that are more realistic than a Gulp shrimp, add that Dr. Juice to it. And now, like, to me, that's the ultimate. It's a more lifelike lure, has better action in the water. And then you add that scent to it. It is, it's my new favorite combo for any time I would otherwise have been using a Gulp shrimp.
I will put up the power prawn, Brazilian or USA, covered with Dr. Juice over the Gulp shrimp all day long. Right. And there will be times that Gulp could win. But in most instances, especially if you're not just fishing in an aquarium, I'm sure someone could prove some point. But if you're actually fishing real areas, I would, and you should do it. Take the challenge. If you think I'm wrong, we'll give you your money back. That power prawn with Dr. Juice is deadly. And that's actually number 3. We talked Gulp's number 2. ProCure was number 3. That was something that we used to buy all the time. I've bought ProCure in forever. Dr. Juice, I mean, we did the studies. We're not sponsored by Dr. Juice. They don't pay us. We did the test just like you should with anything that you buy. And every time we kept using Dr. Juice, the juice is loose. We kept catching more fish. And I haven't bought ProCure in forever. ProCure works. We sell it in our store. We like and we're not trying to beat up any of this stuff. This is more about, hey, these are just things we aren't personally buying because we found we just haven't really needed them. Do you agree? I mean, and now I feel like that with Dr. Juice. Like I'm like going back to the Tahoe. Hey, where did it go? Like I don't fish without Dr. Juice now.
Yeah, I put on everything, and as Joe said, I haven't been using every time I did a head to head, the Dr. Juice was winning, and the cool thing, it doesn't leave that that colored and kind of slimy feel of the outside. It's more it's oil based, so it's much thinner. But although it's thinner and you can't see it, it actually lasts longer. Right. So when I was doing the scent test, I would use one hand to apply one scent, the other hand to apply the other. And there was the Dr. Juice hand that was just so hard to get the stench off. So the good news is that it works, and it works for a long time. The bad news is that it is actually kind of hard to get off the hand. But again, it's just a testament to how long it lasts, and just get toothpaste. Toothpaste is the best to get rid of anything like that.
Yeah.
Or Dawn dish detergent.
Yeah, Dawn dish detergent works. So if you don't believe that Dr. Juice lasts longer than Procure, put a little bit of both on your clothes, and you'll find out pretty quickly which one lasts longer. God, that's brutal. The next one, but Luke and I both grew up as bass guys, and there was a thing called creature baits. If you bass people know what I'm talking about, we had all these different creature baits and try to get cutesy with this stuff, and they work. I mean, they work in I think bass fishing is. I mean that it's crazy how many different lures we all had to have as bass anglers. And now, of course, we're all into simplifying it. But I haven't bought those creature baits in forever. Even Z-Man had some for a while. And I was like, and I buy them. And then I kick myself like, man, why am I buying this stuff? And it's not to say it can't work, but you don't need all that stuff. You don't need things with 15 different legs and centipedes and all these different little creatures, crawfish and crawdaddies. And once again, not trying to poo-poo on them. I'm sure they work in certain instances, but you do not need them. We've been catching more fish than any time in our lives, and we haven't bought creature baits in a long time.
Years. Yeah, and just from testing different lures, it's one thing I just love doing. It's one thing to. I've had too many instances where I just hear hype either on TV or in a magazine or whatever. And oh my gosh, it sounds amazing. And I never even tested it. I would just go buy it and assume it was the best. And once actually testing, whether it's knots or swivels for are they needed or not, it's been pretty eye-opening to see the differences. And one in particular is just like a shrimp lure. There's so many lures on the market that they spend so much time and energy making it look real to the human outside the water, like in the packaging where they have the legs. Some of them even have antennas sticking way out. And every one of those extremities is more drag on the air and on the water. So on the air, it lessens your casting ability. And so for us who love sight fishing redfish and snook and big trout up in the shallows, we all know that the longer your cast, the more likely you're going to catch more fish, and vice versa, right? The shorter you can cast, the less fish you're going to be catching. And so those extremities are really a hindrance on casting ability, and they actually lessen the actual motion in the water as well. It slows the lure down on the glide. That glide down is when the strikes happen, right? You twitch it, and that glide down, if it's just all those little extremities are just kind of making it flutter, it just looks dead. It looks like a dead shrimp. When those shrimp are swimming down, they actually are moving pretty good. And this little glide of the Power Prawn USA lures, that's the magic of it. It's that glide down in the water. And especially going after the bigger fish, it just really, really gets them because you're casting further and you have a better glide. That combination is really tough to beat for a shrimp lure.
Yeah, so creature baits is one. You're almost. This is now almost like a 2-in-1. So we're just talking about realistic lures, right? Because the creature baits, that was just more of like a bass thing, and you're talking about kind of just that realistic. And there's certain brands, we won't name them. You know who they are. They spend so much time and they charge crazy amounts of money to have the most realistic baits. The fish don't care. If you go ask any saltwater angler who's been doing it for at least 10 years or more, what are just the best lures out there, without even thinking, they're going to say a gold spoon and like a bucktail lure. They might say some kind of shrimp. Some might even say power prawn. Slam shady might come in there. None of those things really look that realistic, right? I mean, especially like a gold spoon, a bucktail jig. What does that even look like? I mean, a jerk shad would probably come up for the shallows. Like, what does that really look like a shrimp? I don't think so. And yet some of these companies spend an inordinate amount of time making these things look so realistic because they want to win a stupid award at ICAST. No offense, but some of the awards, like I'm like baffled when some of these awards, and it's all because what the human eye sees. No one's even caught a fish on some of these things. Like literally, there's zero proof of this lure ever catching fish, and it wins an award because it looks great, and they spend all this time like etching in stuff. I'm telling you, you don't need it because we did it. I'm not going to rip on certain brands, but we spent a lot of money on those really expensive lures. You can spend $18, $20 on a single lure, and half of them don't even work at all. Like the fish are laughing at you. Like it's crazy. So I don't know. Every time I see something that looks that realistic, and they spent so much time with, for the shrimp, you were talking about antennas and all these extremities. One, like you said, you can't cast well. It doesn't look as good underwater. It gets extra drag. Like it actually works against you. So be wary anytime you see something that looks that like perfect to the human eye. It usually means that they're trying to get your money to buy something that looks realistic and maybe don't even have proof that it catches that many fish. I'm just speaking from experience, because this is, once again, stuff that I don't buy. I bought all that stuff. I have a whole tackle room of stuff that I've bought that is sitting there collecting dust and or rusting.
Well, it's rare for a lure to not catch anything. If you're in a good spot and the fish are fired up, it's going to catch fish. It's really about what will catch fish consistently, day in, day out, where you don't have to hire like a pro to go catch some fish and show that it works. It's just what like the average angler can use and have continued success with. And that's where, again, the castability has to be a big factor.
Yeah.
That's what day in, day out, one of the best ways to guarantee you're going to catch more fish per trip is to be able to cover more water more efficiently and more effectively. And if you have all those little legs and stuff sitting out there, that's just going to hinder your ability to do so. And regardless of how lifelike that lure looks, it's really about covering ground and having good motion in the water. A spoon is the testament, where you don't have to have a weedless, like a really good looking thing to the human eye. Look at a spoon. It's a curved piece of metal. It covers ground quickly, and the motion in the water mimics some prey to fish, and they go up and hammer it, even though it's not doesn't have like a artist award coming its way, but it flat out catches fish.
Absolutely. Next one. This one to cause a little bit of controversy. Fluoro leader line. Ooh, stuff that we're not buying anymore. Even just Fluoro line in general, haven't really bought that in a while. It's going old school Andy Mono. We sell both in our store. We're not sponsored by any of this stuff. In fact, we make more money if you buy the Fluoro leader line. But we personally, I mean, we get the same insider discounts you guys do for you insider members. If you're not an insider member, what the heck you waiting on? Come join us in the club. But I haven't bought it in a while, and that was because of you. I mean, you've done a lot of contests on that, and so we have mono versus Fluoro, and then you have this Fluoro just line in general, and then Fluoro leader line, which is even smaller spools, 20 yards, let's just say, which are even more expensive than all of those combined. What's your take?
Yeah, I was a total believer in it. I just totally bought into the marketing hype that's behind it. There's a lot of it, right? Just because there's so much money involved that I'm sure the line doesn't cost much more to produce, if at all. And they're selling like a 25-yard spool for $20 or more in many cases, where you can get just regular monofilament, like a 600-yard spool for less money, right? So it's not, I mean, the price comparison is not even close. What was most shocking is once I started doing tests on it. I built a test assembly to test the abrasion resistance of line. And I really did it to prove the fact that the fluorocarbon that I was personally using and that I was originally recommending in some of our courses that we did at the very beginning, I was doing it just to prove how much better the fluorocarbon was, because there's really no test. Like, it's shocking how many believers there are of it, but there's no actual like head-to-head tests that are unbiased. And so I was like determined, okay, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to prove that it's better. And I was blown away when just regular monofilament absolutely smoked the much more expensive fluorocarbon line, to the point where I thought the machine was busted and not working. So then I was doing recalibrating. I was switching the sides, and sure enough, mono kept winning over and over and over again. And originally I did a 20-pound line versus a 20-pound mono versus 20-pound fluoro. Fluorocarbon lines, if you don't know, are typically a little bit thinner in diameter per the listed line strength. So then I equated diameters, thinking, okay, maybe it was the diameter difference. So I did a 15-pound regular monofilament to a 20-pound fluorocarbon. This is like the Seaguar Blue Label, which is a really good fluorocarbon, and the mono is actually this regular Andy, 50-yard spool. And the 15-pound, even though the Andy was slightly thinner than the 20-pound fluorocarbon, this monofilament line, regular monofilament line, won, and that's on abrasion, right? When comparing the knot strength of the similar diameters, fluorocarbon does have a slight advantage. That is, I'm not going to say fluorocarbon's worse in every capacity, but as far as my biggest concern is abrasion, I do a lot of snook fishing. Snook are very strong. They have mouths kind of like a bass, where it's sandpaper, but they can actually rub through line very, very effectively. And so the abrasion factor is really what I'm most concerned with. That's where most of my big big snook get away on. And so I've now switched totally to monofilament. Then I'm saving way more money, and I really have not seen a difference in fish catching on both quantity or quality. So I have not bought fluorocarbon in quite some time for my personal use. I still buy it for line tests. We still get a lot of recommendations on line tests to do, and so I'll just go pick some up, but ends up just sitting in the storeroom.
Yep. All right, next one. A little bit different, but very, very important. And this is Aerosol Sunscreen. In particular, like the big brands that you see, the Coppertones, and I will mention brands this time, Coppertones, the Bullfrogs, all that stuff is chemical based. And I'm a skin cancer survivor, get real serious about this. And obviously, once you find out that you have like legit getting close to stage 2 melanoma, skin cancer, this is not just like something they're cutting off. Like this is when they start talking about, hey, we might have to cut off your arm kind of a deal. You start getting a little bit more concerned about what you're putting on your body and how you're protecting it. And obviously shirts are great. I still use sunblock, which is different than sunscreen. Most of America doesn't even know that. And here's the difference. Sunscreen is what you see in most of the stores. If you go to a convenience store, Circle K, whatever, you see the Coppertones and the Bullfrogs and it's spray stuff. Even if it's not, it's chemical based. And Luke, it's right. It's horrible for your boat. You've been completely burned by it. I know it doesn't stay on as long. It's horrible for the environment. I mean, it literally is the stuff that like kills coral reefs. If you just went down there and put all this chemical, it's chemicals, where the other one is not chemical based. It is physical based, and it stays on top of your skin. It lasts longer. It protects you better. And it's a whole lot better for your body. A little bit more expensive, but it also is going to help you not get skin cancer like I did, because I was the guy going buying the cheap Coppertone and Bullfrog stuff all the time. And two, it's going to protect your boats, your kayaks, and everything's a whole lot better. And it's not full of chemicals. So what you want to see, just in general, I did a whole podcast and a whole blog on this that we can link to. But in general, on the back, on the active ingredients, you want to see zinc, right? Remember old school zinc? If you're old enough like me, we used to put zinc on our nose, and those are the important areas. Zinc dioxide, the thick stuff, and then titanium dioxide is as well. I mean, those two, and if you have them combined, even better. But if you see all these oxy, benzo, and all these extra things, or that's all you see, it is pretty much all chemical based. And I'll get off the podium there, but it shocks me how many people I see, and there's some captains that now won't even let you bring, and especially the aerosol stuff. It's horrible. I mean, it gets all over the place. It gets on your deck. It gets on the entire boat. It's disgusting. It drives me crazy.
And on the aerosol stuff too is the worst I've ever been burnt in my life. And so just so you know, what I learned the hard way is easy on, easy off. So if you're actually hopping in the water, I went scalloping one summer, and I was actually putting on sunscreen, and actually multiple times. But I was using that spray. We were a bunch of dudes. I didn't want anybody to rub sunscreen on my back, so I was spraying it on my back. And I should have been wearing a shirt, one of those dive shirts. That's what I do now. But it was the worst I've ever been burnt in my life. And I actually reapplied multiple times. So now knowing, at the time, I didn't realize how bad it was for the environment. So I was hurting the environment while I just roasted my back. So easy. If you're getting in the water, definitely do not use that aerosol, because it'll come right off, and then you can get totally fried like I did that day.
Yeah, you'll see it. I mean, watch someone, even non-aerosol, just anything chemical, they put it on, you get in the water, even 30 minutes, an hour later, and you see this slick. I mean, it's just all chemicals. It's disgusting. But the other ones, I mean, Luke's wearing one right now. I'm indoors, so I'm not. But anytime you see me fishing, I usually have the hoodie on, the long sleeve performances are, I mean, that's like putting a physical block on your skin, and you will not get burned if you have like a 55 UPF rating. There's some that aren't as high, but all the ones that we've been selling have been 55 plus of that UPF rating, which is really important. All right, moving on. Reels. We'll get back to some of the tackle things. Reels that are too heavy, I would say, and just too big, right? 4,000s, 5,000. We're talking about inshore saltwater fishing. We obviously still use big ones for going after grouper, snapper, tarpon. But back in the day, and Luke, we still have some, at the condo there. And I feel them. I'm like, I can't believe I was casting with this thing. It weighs a ton, like 15 ounces, and I'm trying to throw lures with it. Now, like
we got the Fuegos and these BGMQs that are in the 8 range, and it is night and day difference, especially if you're casting lures. But any kind of casting or any kind of just holding, I mean, that wears on you all day. What do you got?
Yeah, and especially, so here's what I used to buy is the 4,000 size reels. This is a good reel. This is a Shimano CI4, but it's just really not effective for inshore saltwater, especially if you're using light line to cast long distances in shallow water. The bigger spool diameter actually starts hurting castability and increases the odds for wind knots, is what I realized. So now I'm actually mostly using 10-pound braid, and I'll just put it on a 2,500 size reel, and it holds more than enough line. Right, a lot of these, every reel company is a little bit different. I've since switched from Shimano to Daiwa, which is after testing reels, and even these 2,500 size reels will hold more than 150 yards of 10-pound braid, which is more than enough you need. No snook of any size is going to run off 150 yards of braid. That's a lot of line, and this will hold more than that. So holds a ton of line, casts better. It's way lighter, so it's just easier to use, and it just requires less work, and it has less issues. So definitely made a big switch on size, where I thought I needed at least a 4,000 with at least 20-pound line to handle big, overslot snook, and in inshore waterways. That's not true at all, right? Yes, if you're fishing inlets, if you're fishing areas with heavy current flow, lots of hard structure, and big fish like inlets and many passes, you'll need the bigger gear. But if you're doing the typical bays, creeks, and just inland waterways, these little smaller reels can get the job done, and they're way more affordable and just easier to use, more effective.
And as you get older, the weight really means a lot, regardless if you're casting artificial or not. But I would challenge you, when the next time you buy a reel, whether it's a 2,500 or 3,000, we kind of like both for inshore, or even 1,000, check out the weight on there. I remember because our dad, like that one time we fished a tournament with him, and he had his old school stuff, weighs 12 ounces or whatever. And we're, using little Fuegos that are 7.5 or 8. And he was dying. Like he was literally like like he could barely move. And he finally picked up ours, and he's like, oh my gosh. And that's all he buys now is a really lightweight Daiwa. He's like, man, this is like a game changer. I can feel my hands again. So definitely check out the weight. The next one, this will probably also ruffle some feathers, but DOA. I'm going to go around the record, like DOA. I got nothing against DOA. Used to buy them just like I did Gulp, and I haven't bought DOA in forever. We keep it in our store because people request it. But I mean, same deal. I would take that Power Prawn, because the DOA shrimp was the one that I used the most. I would take the Power Prawn or Power Prawn Junior over DOA all day long, every day. And if anyone has science that proves differently, I'd love to see it. But I don't see myself buying DOA unless they make some revolutionary change. And they haven't really changed this stuff in a long time. It works still. So
you can't say DOA. It's DOA shrimp in particular. The DOA has a ton of lures, many of which are great. But yeah, the shrimp in particular, again, they have, first of all, they can't be rigged weedless, which is a big problem. A lot of the biggest fish are holding and around structure, right? They're ambush predators, whether we're talking about redfish, sea trout, snook, or flounder. They're all ambush predators, meaning that they'll more likely be holding around some sort of structure. And then conversely, they're less likely to be holding on just bare sand. And so to be weedless is a big deal. And so in this case, but with this lure, it has a shrimp profile, right? A little bit more realistic, but it can be rigged weedless. And a huge advantage once you can skip under docks or skip under mangroves or bounce off of rocks without the risk of getting snagged. The results totally skyrocket. I do still use DOAs like their swimming mullets on the nearshore reefs, solid lure. Even their cow shads, the 3-inch cow shads are just nice paddle tails that you can, if you need a smaller paddle tail to cover water, they're solid. So, but it's that DOA shrimp in particular, again, use them for many years, and they've just since just kind of become a little bit outdated based on the newer technology out there.
Yep. And I was more shrimp. I said it too broadly. I was more shrimp, and then the Terrorize, right? That was the DOA Terrorize back in the day. I used to love that thing, and I don't even know if they still make it.
Yeah, they do.
Okay. But both of those two in particular, for the most part, are pre-rigged, right? The DOA Terrorize comes with the pre-rigged. It was a cool little bait, and same with the shrimp. But I mean, we now preach it over and over again, which is another thing, is don't buy pre-rigged shrimp. There's no reason to. Otherwise, you're stuck fishing it in the only type of depth that it was designed for. And they're really tough to unrig them and try to put something else in there without completely messing it up. The other one, things that we don't buy anymore and why, is heavy braid. Remember when we first started, it was, 20 would be as light as you go. It was always that, man, what if we got into that big one, right? We're really going to need to have this extra line. And who knows how many fish we missed from having 20. That means you can't cast as further. You obviously have extra drag in the water. You got everything going against you when you're inshore saltwater fishing and you've got 20 or 30 pound braid on for your main line.
Yeah, well, this is one that I still buy, just not as frequently. So it was used to be reliant on at least 20 pounds. Now I still use it, but it's just if I'm fishing docks or if I'm fishing inlets, where again, big fish, heavy current, and hard structure. When you have that combination, you really need some strong line. But when that's not that combination, just on these little small reels, this one in particular I caught, it was probably like a 25 plus pound black drum, handled it perfectly fine. I've caught many snook, over slot, some over 40 inches, near oyster bars. And as long as there's not some super strong current flow, these smaller reels with a thinner line, a 10-pound line and good knots, it's shocking how big a fish you can catch with light line. And then the knot strength is a big one. So like the FG knot in particular, once I found that, I've actually started testing my knots, which I never did before. And just from actually testing knots and spending a little bit of time learning which knots to use with which lines, my overall knot strength and my overall line strength has gone up by over 30%. And again, that is another thing that's totally on us. We have complete control over the equipment we use and the knots we use. And so it pains me to see people that don't just put a little bit of time into making sure that those items are maximized. Because in fishing, right, hooking into a wild animal, many of which are very strong with sharp teeth and sharp objects in the water, you might as well get as much of the equation to your advantage as possible. And the knots, the lines, the rods, the reels, that's the stuff we really need to maximize. And to spend smartly, right? Save some money on the fluorocarbon lines and apply that money to like a nicer rod, or just making sure that your equipment is not old, like your line's not old, and you replace it as needed.
Yep. Next one, a little bit more expensive and heavy. Talking about cast nets. I haven't bought cast nets in a long time. And that would have been a slap in the face. 20 years ago, we wouldn't go fishing without having a cast net and live bait, and ideally live well blacked out. And now I have one cast net. I got that thing for free. Threw it a couple of times in the backyard, about broke my back. And it seems crazy to have to think of you have to bring that. And there's still guys. We know them. We got some of our friends. We see people we're down at Gasparilla Island and Boca Grande, and that's all that's on their mind when they wake up. They got to get extra early and get that bait first. Otherwise, they can't fish. They literally don't know how to fish without it. And that's not good. There's a time for live bait. We have courses on it. We preach. It's amazing. Like, and I was going after a state record fish, I'd probably get a bunch of live bait. Peter Deeks, dude, he'd be crazy not to have live bait. He's got people who are paying him a lot of money to go trophy hunting. Live bait, none of these things are bad. We're not saying they're bad, minus the aerosol chemicals. But man, I can't imagine having to do that every single time. Can you imagine?
Oh, I totally can, because that was me. I did that for many years, where I thought that, the step number one every trip was to get a bunch of live bait, and sometimes spend an hour to do so. If the bait's hard to find, it was to the point where I just had no confidence in lures. I truly didn't think that saltwater fish really struck lures. I was a big time bass angler and loved it, and would actually rarely use live bait bass fishing. It was all lures. And I just thought that saltwater was different. I thought the fish were smarter or whatever, just preferred live bait. And then again, years later, finally started giving it a shot and started just, again, testing out different lures, figuring out what works. And now I'm to the point where I'm like, man, like these saltwater fish are way more aggressive than bass. It's just a matter of finding them and finding the we call it the 90-10 spots, like finding the 90, the 10% of the water that holds 90% of the fish. And when you do that, your odds are going to skyrocket. And it's much easier to do that when you're using lures because you can actually cover more water in the same period of time, especially when you factor in how much time is wasted just getting the live bait in general. Many of which, most of which is the best feeding time, right? Like that twilight zone. Can't remember how many sunrises I saw while chumming up water to catch bait. And I should have been throwing a moonwalk, like a topwater plug or something in a good fishing spot to be catching the trophy fish. And there I'm just sitting there trying to catch some little dink live bait to then throw to fish later. So lots of missed opportunities for me over the years because I fell into that issue. And so if you're there as well, highly recommend just forcing yourself to try lures. It'll be a little bit frustrating at first, right? There's a learning curve, just like anything new, but the reward is just well worth it. You can now go out in a 2-hour time span and consistently catch good fish. Whereas if you do the live bait route, sometimes you spend half that just getting the live bait, and it really requires that you have to stay out there all day, which is tough.
And then you gotta spend time and money keeping it alive, right? We've all had days like that. If you're in a live bait where something goes wrong with your pumps, there's a million things that go wrong. Someone puts chemical-based sunscreen in the live well. There's a lot of things that can happen. And heck, as you get older, it gets tougher, right? It especially if you're throwing a 10 or 12 foot net, that starts hurting your back. I'm sure my back definitely has some issues, and I can't blame it on throwing cast nets, but it definitely didn't help. I was throwing 12 foot nets like when I was 15 and super skinny, and I'm sure that wasn't good for me, all that drag in the water. But yeah, so now long story short, I don't even take a cast net on the boat. Like I just went on a camping trip down the Everglades and didn't even bother with a cast net and caught more fish than I ever did way back in the day when I was live bait only. Yep. So we have about 10 more, but we're going to reserve those for our insider members. So if you're not a member, you should probably join. Just one more reason to join us in the club. Got a little over 28,000 people now as we record this. And man, it's been so cool. It started off with really just talking about trends, right? Because that's really the most important part, because you don't need a cast net if you know the trends, if you know the biology of these fish and where to find them every weekend. And now it's morphed into, tackle discounts. We've now taken trends to a whole new level. We have things that help you find the best spot. We have software now that literally you can pick your little tide station and it starts predicting the best day, the best time of day. It is like, it's every shortcut every angler wished they had when they first started. And so we take this learning curve like completely off it. Even full-time guides are using it just to always make sure they have every possible shortcut to find the fish. And then of course, now the community has been really the third piece that solidified all of it together. It's why we call it a family. It's so cool. It's so tight knit. Everyone's so helpful. They're sharing what's working. And, we now have multiple people doing these little spot dissections where they go dissect, spots on maps and kind of help people understand why the fish are in certain places at certain times of the day and tides, et cetera. And then, you can justify it by just the discounts alone. We're one, telling you what not to buy, right? The things that you should avoid wasting your money on. Not that they don't work, but the things that work better, right? That's what it's all about. Because there's, like to your point, Luke, there's tons of things you can throw out there when there's a feeding frenzy. If you find the 90-10 zone, there's probably a million lures, but you don't have to have all those things. Why not save your money and get the things that absolutely work the best and are going to be the most consistent and the most value for your money, and save 20 or 30% on it every time you buy it in our store. And so that's really what we're trying to do here in the club, is make sure that even if you don't get a fish for the whole year, that you can justify it just on the tackle savings alone until that time when you do get to fish. Because that does happen. People, have things happen in their lives where you plan on fishing. Oh, I'm going to fish every week for the year. And all of a sudden months go by and you're like, I haven't even fished yet, or I fished once. So if you're busy and if you're not getting to fish as much as you want to, or if you're the opposite, this club can help you out either way. We have people in every walk of life and age. We got like a 12-year-old all the way up to like a 90-year-old in the club, and everyone from people fishing out of their wading boots to people with really nice skiffs and boats and kayaks. It's all over the place. It's been really neat. So that's all at saltstrong.com. For you current members, thank you guys so much. You're the foundation of this company, and get some really cool things coming on the technology side to help you get in the right spot at the right time, based on trends.
Yeah, and as far as just the overview of the club, it's just the ultimate fishing club for anybody who likes catching redfish, sea trout, snook, flounder. There's nothing else like it.
Yep.
It's just the stuff that we wish we had when we were cutting our teeth and having to learn things the hard way. And we back it up by the best guarantee in the industry, where if you use it, right, join, and you have an entire year to make sure it's the best investment you've ever made in fishing. If you don't think you're catching more fish than you ever have before, and you're not saving money on all the tackle you need, you have a full year to make sure that we fulfill those two big promises. And if somehow you don't think we did, regardless of even if we did, and you just need to get the money back for financial reasons, just let us know and we'll refund the money. No questions asked. We really stand behind it. We know that it works. We've seen countless testimonials from members from Texas all the way along the Gulf to Florida, up around to the Atlantic, all the way up to Virginia and even further north. So we know it works. We know you're going to love it. And we just hope that you give it a shot, because we really do think you're going to be blown away with what you see in there.
Yep, absolutely. So thank you guys. Go to saltstrom.com to learn more. We'll also have this whole this whole podcast in a blog post, which is in the fishing tips section at saltstrom.com. And you can leave a question or a comment, or if there's something that you're no longer buying, or if any of these things resonated with you, let us know. I have a feeling they probably will. And there's certainly some that we missed. Like I said, we have a handful of others that we'll continue to be sharing with our insider members on things not to buy. And one other cool thing that we do is we do side-by-side comparisons, because we don't have any sponsors. We've had people ask to sponsor us and we reject them all, because we serve you guys. We listen, you guys are our customers. And we want to tell you like it is, just like we wish someone would have done with us. So we do these side-by-side comparisons on different types of tackle products. And it's super, super helpful. We'll say, all right, if it was me, I would buy this one and not this one for these reasons. And then we'll offer it to you. We'll offer both of them, just like the mono and Fluoro. You can buy whatever you want. But if I were you, I'd be saving money on that mono. Whoop, whoop. All right, Luke, good times?
Oh, yeah.
We out. Peace. Whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul.